So welcome to the Node.js package maintenance team meeting for May 13th, 2019. We'll follow the agenda set in the issue, which is issue number 201. If everybody can add themselves as an attendee, I'll paste the link to the minutes into the chat. Just do that. Chat. That would be good. And we'll start going through the agenda. So I guess to start out with, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to make? Edgar or Glenn, I think if you're talking, you're on mute.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so how many people are likely to go to the Collaborators Conference? Because we talked about having a session and I don't.
I'm definitely going, although is Glenn frozen just for me?
He's frozen for me too.
Okay, good. I never know whether it's me or somebody else, but we'll give him a second to come back. We'll just wait one more minute. If they don't make it back by then, we'll move on and then flip back. Okay, I see they completely dropped, so maybe that means they know they're rebooting. Okay. Oh, maybe they're back, but okay, well, let's move on the agenda, and when they come back, we can pick up on that. So the first thing on the agenda is 200, so a list of packages that do not test in latest LTS. Number 200.
Yeah, that's me, I suppose.
Yep. You want to just give us a quick intro, or if you already talked about it last week, pick up for wherever we're at.
No, we did not discuss this just yet. Okay, so basically NPM recently shared a doc where they listed the top 1,000 most downloaded packages. I took that list, I downloaded all the pack comments, as they're called, basically a summary of the package information from NPM, and I downloaded all the Git repos of all these packages where Git repos were available. I think there were 2 or 3 that were not. And then I scanned that data. I found almost 900 Travis YAML files, so that's, let's say, 90% of the packages test on Travis. In some of those, I probably didn't find Travis YAML because they're mono repos, or they might be testing it, I don't know, up there, or CircleCI, or whatever else they do, or not testing at all. But 90% test in Travis, so it's a good set of data. And then I tried to take all these Travis YAML files and extract the node versions out of them. A lot of them just use the default versions. The default is the latest stable, which at the time, well, it was already 12, but I chose to basically normalize that to 11 to explicitly, so that it's very explicitly visible that most people are testing with the latest stable and not latest LTS. Basically, when a new stable comes out, they will stop testing in latest LTS. So I think there's the very, very first action point there is that needs to be an evangelism effort to ask people to test in all the LTS versions, and as well as the stable, right? Which requires maintenance. So then there's the roll-on discussion about bots and whether the bots are opt-in or they just go and scan and open PRs, and what goes out of this. Yeah, I guess that's the summary.
Yeah, I think that's definitely interesting. So like, because one of the things we have is we have a PR, which is like testing guidance, right? So I think the very first thing would be to add to that something that says, you know, if we recommend that you test on the latest LTSs and the latest current, if that's what we think makes sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, I think if we did that, and then I think you're right, the next thing is to like publicize that, saying, you know, you did this work to analyze the top 1,000, here's what we found, and it's like, well, wait a second, what this means is blah blah blah, and you know, I think we can publish a blog, get it sent under the node, you know, node medium, basically to say, and what we really think you should be doing is this. We might want to get some feedback along the way from like the TSC and anybody else we can think in terms of who would, you know, possibly come up with reasons why what we're recommending doesn't make sense. But I think that's definitely a good idea. Because the 11, I certainly, when I looked at the list, it was like, well, why 11? And the latest makes sense, but you're right. Like right now,
yeah,
the latest kind of
had
makes
just
sense.
come out.
Yeah.
12 had just come out. I didn't want, I specifically did not want the numbers to misrepresent that, you know, people started testing in 12 because,
Right.
well, we did, but at the same time, when 13 comes out, they're going to start testing in 13 and stop testing in 12, which is the deep problem.
The other thing that this makes me wonder, is there anything we can do with Travis? Like, could we talk to them and say, hey, is there an option that instead of just the latest is like latest LTSs?
Yeah. Ideally, the default would be all the LTSs and stable. Right.
So that would make it easier on it, because you're talking about the maintenance side. I think, you know, opening up a conversation with the Travis. So I'm going to flip over to the board here. So where are projects, right? Sorry, I'm going to share this just so that you can see and see if it looks good. So you can see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think what we want to do is like a reach out to Travis to get defaults that include LTS releases plus current, right? Is that any more information that we would need to put in there to?
Yeah, I think it's a good start. Do we?
Sorry, go ahead.
Is there an approach to actually try to push through the change in the existing Travis YAML as part of this, or do we just try to evangelize and see if there's effect over time?
Right. So you're saying, can we convince Travis to change their default?
So not just that, we need package authors to start basically testing in there, not just, I mean, there's the default, of course. If Travis changed the default, then that's great. A lot of people have explicitly listed latest or stable in their version list, but not necessarily listed the latest LTS. So there's some data analysis to be done there. But what I also did is I scanned the packages that we use at work.
Yeah.
And I found that out of the top 1,000 packages, we use around 800-ish, 850.
Okay.
Which means that these are really, really, really popular packages.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure, right, okay.
And you know, that they should be really testing that. So is this the time where we unleash the horde of package maintenance volunteers or something like that? to try to open PRs and update all of that, at least in the top 1,000.
Right. Okay. So I'm still a little cautious in terms of like making it opt-in.
Okay.
Like I think sending an email, say to like, can we get the emails for those packages? Or I guess there's not much difference between opening an issue and a PR, right?
Yep. I'm about to enter a tunnel and I will drop off for a few minutes. So.
Okay. I'm just typing in the next module.
Is the string LTS an option for Travis when specifying node version?
According to Travis, I didn't have the time to test that, but according to Travis documentation, and I did find that in some Travis YAMLs, there's a string which says LTS/wildcard ***, but the documentation says that this will take the latest LTS and not all the current LTS versions. So there's a gotcha there, but there is a way to specify that you at least tested the latest LTS. So that's something.
Right. Okay. But it would be, I mean, I think we should reach out to Travis to see if it's possible to get one, which would be all the active LTSs. Either by changing that LTS to be that, or some new like all LTS or something like that. I think that would be useful. So I've created these three things. So reach out to Travis to get the options, to get option that includes option. That includes LTS releases and current. Update our testing guidance to recommend testing against that. We should write a blog post. Like I think if you wrote a blog post that explained the data that you captured, what we saw, and then it could be then a call to action from this group to say, hey, we're recommending you test all these. This is what we recommend you test and why, and then we can publicize that. I think that would be good. Then the question which you raised is a very good point. Is like, then do we ask the volunteers enlist volunteers? Oops. And I wonder, like Greenkeeper, how do we know how that works? Like, is there any chance they could add a rule which would?
I'm sure Greenkeeper and Renovate both could potentially support that. Renovate is very flexible. I'm less so sure about Greenkeeper, but I'm in the tunnel, so I'll rejoin you in a couple of minutes.
Okay, sure. Oops, I'm gonna have to, sorry, yeah. I just noticed that that Edgar and Glenn were waiting to be promoted back in, and that Manuel had also joined. So just for you two who've joined back in, we were just talking about issue number 201. No, it's not issue 201. Issue 200.
Yeah, sorry, we were good. We were watching, but we didn't get promoted.
Okay, good. So did you have anything you wanted to add as the discussion went on, since you couldn't? during that time?
One thing, I just typed it onto the Slack channel, that when you mentioned Greenkeeper, we should perhaps take on the second point. They are one of the sponsors at JS EU. They're also local Berlin based, and if actually we should contact them and ask them if they want to come to Collaborators Conference, and we can talk to them.
That's a good idea. Do you want to do that?
I shall do that. Yeah, I just wanted to ask before I did it.
I think that makes total sense to me to say, hey, you know, yeah, I think it makes sense. You know, obviously not if they show up with 100 people, but I don't think that's going to happen, right? Like 1 or 2 people would actually be good. And I think like I just added into the list there, one of the things we should investigate is whether Greenkeeper and Renovate could generate PRs to the add to testing. And so, yeah, if they showed up, that would actually be a great thing to kind of discuss that. And then the final thing I added in the list there, which I just define an opt-in process and then enlist volunteers to generate PRs against top modules to ensure testing against LTS. This releases LTS releases. So well, hopefully Dominicus will be back in just a minute. Maybe while we're waiting for him to get out of the tunnel, you were talking about who's going to be at the Collaborator Summit?
So, yeah, I'm Glenn. I'm going to be there. Unfortunately, Edgar would like to be there, but he can't fly back quickly enough to get to his holiday in Alaska, which is already paid for.
Yeah, but, oh well.
Who else is going to be there?
I'm definitely going to be there.
I'll be there too.
Okay. That was Manuel speaking?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That's good. So we'll have 3 or 4. I'm pretty sure Mateo's going to be there. And hopefully we can also get some interest in some other people who, you know, may not be participating as often today, but we can really have a good discussion and possibly even convince them to get more engaged.
We have a couple of folks to promote to panelists, by the way.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, because that one disappears once the...
So can I ask, because I don't see us in the proposed sessions, do we need to actually create a session in the Collaborators Conference? I don't see us there yet.
I did actually try, so let me see. Comments. I think I may have actually, like, I submitted it through the tool and it didn't work. So here I'm going to paste it in the chat. Where are we? Come on, more chat. There we go. This is the issue I think that confirms that our session is added.
Okay.
So Eva Ho has said, I'll add your session to the spreadsheet and agenda. Suggested something like an hour, as long as that's what everybody else was using. Because yeah, I definitely I went to the tool, I submitted it, at the end it's like, it's not there. And somebody else, I'm pretty sure, had mentioned that too. So that's why I opened the issue. Because I don't think the agenda, I haven't seen an agenda yet for us to confirm against, but we should be on.
I saw it in the Google Docs.
You mean in the submission? Like once you submit, there was the list?
I'm searching it.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting also that Dominic should say that 800 of the 1,000 were actually we were using. So that is definitely good confirmation.
Yeah, I was surprised myself. I was curious. Yeah, it was a bit of a surprise.
Okay, so while you were in the tunnel, if we flip back to I added a couple more things to our to-dos. So like investigate if Greenkeeper and Renovate could generate PRs to add testing against recommended versions. And Glenn mentioned that they're actually local in Berlin, so he's going to reach out and see if maybe we can get them to come to the summit and talk to them then. And then finally, I added the last one, which is like define an opt-in process and then enlist volunteers to generate PRs against the top modules. But what that opt-in might be, I don't know, because yeah, if to contact them is just as intrusive as generating a PR, we might just generate PRs.
Yeah, I don't know a good way of approaching this.
Right. I mean, if anything, we might start slow. Like, you know, you could do 1 or 2 a week and see how it goes, or 10 a week or something. And if people are generally receptive, then say great, and you know, continue. But I would hesitate to like spam all 300 the first week. Just so if it bugs people or they come back with no, I don't want to do that for these reasons. We haven't annoyed a whole whack of people. But.
I suppose if we start with a blog post and that's pretty high visibility, I think we can track how many updates in how much time, because I think that it was news to me as well that, you know, it wasn't news per se, but it was surprising that so many people do that, and I think it might be a misconception that on how Travis setup works. So it might just be a matter of publicizing that. Regarding the blog, who can do that, and how do we approach that?
So I think if you just write up a blog, we can then send an email to the communication staff at the what I'd suggest is open an issue. If you want to take the first crack at the blog that says, here's what it is, we can give you some comments or tweaks. Then we can just send an email to the foundation's promotion staff to say, hey, here's a blog we'd like to go out. And I think they'll take it from there and work with you to get it out.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Okay. So I will say, I'm going to move that to in progress. And can I assign that to you? I don't know.
No idea.
Yeah, I haven't used these enough to. I know I can. Like some of those.
From the 3 dots, you can convert it in an issue in the note, not in the column.
I've clicked it. Where is that? And oh, this one. Okay.
Yep.
Convert to issue. Okay. Perfect. Convert to issue. Good to learn new things. And then I'm going to assign that to Dominicus. Okay. Now, does anybody know people at Travis or have any contacts?
I'm in their, like, one of their Slack channels because I maintain NVM. So I sort of have contact with them, but they've been relatively unresponsive since the layoffs a couple months ago. Okay. So I mean, I can certainly ask whatever questions are needed, but I can't promise how much resources or responsiveness they'll have.
Sure, and that's manual, right? So here I will. Yeah, if it's not possible, but I think it's worthwhile for us to explore that as a possibility.
Well, it was Jordan speaking.
Sorry, Jordan. Okay, sorry, I can't always.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't raise my hand or anything.
Okay. Oops, sorry. Now I've got 2 people. Okay. good. So I guess I'd ask a similar question. So Glenn, maybe if you're going to already talk to them about joining the session in Berlin, you could also talk to them about this. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So I will assign that to you then. Let's say, Pierre, this is actually pretty nice, I gotta say. Okay, and then updating the testing guidance.
I think the PR is still open, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. So I'm going to let's see if we can find that. PR here. No, oops, sorry. I think we must have landed it because I don't see it open. Blocks, drafts.
There's
Guidelines.
157.
But it seems to be landed here.
Ah.
So let's. How do I edit that guy? Okay. Update. Okay, so does anybody want to volunteer for that one, or we could even ask Emily since she did the original version?
I can work on it.
Okay, that's manual, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm over here, right? Okay, and then I think it makes sense to get those done, and then we can look at an opt-in process. And like Dominic was saying, if we see like after having blogged that people start moving over, maybe we need to do something or not. If we find out that Greenkeeper can help, we might not need to just engage volunteers. Otherwise, we can do that. So we'll leave that one in the backlog if that makes sense to people. Okay, so that sounds good. If anything else people want to discuss on that issue before we move on? I'm just going to take a quick note. Good discussion. Issue created. Issues number. Sorry. 204. Okay, so moving on to the next issue, session at the Node.js Collaborator Summit. Let's see. I think we've already discussed that, but let's just.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we can close that issue, or should we open it leave it open until the session happens?
leave it open and I'll type in things for the interactions with Greenkeeper.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, session, I'm just going to say session submitted. Summit will I think what I'll do is I'll take it off the agenda because it'll either already have happened by the time we get together or doesn't need to be on the agenda. Okay, so baseline practices, number 164, npm ignore or package.json. I think, Joel, were you working on that one?
Yeah, last time, I think we talked about a month ago, and there were a few minor review comments. I've updated them.
Okay.
So, sorry, Glenn and Edgar here. So I read this, and this was, I made some comments on this today because I think LJ had quite a lot to say on this subject, and I don't think it was all reflected. So I went and
summarized it.
Yeah, I went and kind of summarized it because I don't think we've reached sort of consensus on this one. Actually, there are two schools of thought. One is I want everything, and there's not a lot of middle ground. And then there's the other side, like the package phobia side, is I don't want everything. And there isn't much middle ground. Then I see both sides have valid, there's valid reasons for both sides. But I think we do quickly need, because LJ Hub, he basically said, he made some valid points about what if there is what if there's no GitHub repo? Well, perhaps that would never happen when we didn't maintain things. Should the tests be in there? How much should be in? He basically wants the source and the dist and all the tests, and the sort of, then there's the package phobia side of thing. And I looked at the comments from, was it Stifle? He basically, they don't think that is the way. And I think we actually probably need like a 2-minute quick discussion on that.
Right. So,
do we have to make a decision there? Do we have to make a recommendation? Do we have to have an official approach there? Do we have to be opinionated on this one? I think it's one where it doesn't
I think the original, well, I wouldn't call it consensus, but the original agreement is that it seems that the opinion on both sides of the fence, and they're both valid. So we want to just kind of like put it out there, hey, these are the things that you can do, but we don't really make a recommendation on either one. And up to you on how you want to publish, like, and these are the ways you can use to specify what files you would like to publish. And regarding on the point of that when a published package does not have GitHub, I think for me, when I see a package that I don't see a GitHub URL that I can go back to the GitHub URL, I actually become automatically suspicious of the package. I would actually look into the package, really look into it to make sure that to see what's going on. And for me, any package that does not have a GitHub URL or a GitHub that does not exist, I would go above and beyond to make sure that I don't use that package.
Yeah, I would kind of echo the same thing. Now, LJ Harb had his hand up.
Yeah, so even though I have a very strong opinion as to what files should and shouldn't be published, as I've expressed on the issue, I do think that regardless, I feel like as a group who hopefully represents many constituencies across the ecosystem, we do actually have a responsibility to make recommendations, but they don't have to be a single recommendation. And we can recommend multiple paths that are in conflict with each other, but say sort of like, if here are the options, if you go down this path, try and follow this set of guidelines. If you go down this path, here is a different set of guidelines. So for the people who want to publish the smallest package possible, I think that there are guidelines we can give them that kind of give them the least bad way to do that from the perspective of detractors like myself, or the best way to do that from the perspective of supporters, and vice versa. If you want to publish code, as much as possible with your package, then it can be the least bad way to do it from the people who are concerned about package size, and the best way to do it from the people who are concerned about offline access. And so I think that that there is still, because there's infinite possible ways to do things, it's still useful to create a few different like paved roads, even if they lead to different places.
I know we had talked before about the fact that NPM Tink is addressing this in a new way. I'm not exactly 100% clear on what's different, but it would be nice to be able, from the consuming side, to say, please don't give me X, or please, you know.
Well, so with Tink, what their plan is essentially you will be able to publish terabytes of packages if you want, but Tink will only download on demand the files that you use. So, and then there will be an option you can use to say, yes, I really do want you to like spew all of it onto my hard drive, which I would use, but not everyone would. And I think that's a great balance. And I think the package, you know, the CLI is the tool to solve that, not individual authors or our group. So once that type of optimization comes into play, I feel like nobody will care about package size anymore, because no one will ever, except the people who don't care, no one will ever actually interact with the full contents of the package ever again anyway.
Does it dynamically download it when you run?
I believe the current intention is to try to guess in advance using static analysis, and then dynamically download as you run the first time. Yeah. Okay. So like you could do that in development and in tests, and then you'd have an artifact you could tar up for production.
Right. Okay. Because I'm thinking I definitely don't want to do that in production. But...
Sure.
And then
it's relatively trivial to like prime your node modules folder or whatever with that information in advance.
Tree shaking at initial runtime.
Well, it's actually the opposite. Like tree shaking is correcting architectural flaws to remove unused code. This is just not growing those branches in the first place. So it's like it achieves the same goal, but arguably in a better direction.
I'm also,
and then it kind of obviates this whole discussion, which is nice.
Because along your lines of different recommendations, you know, one thing I could see is there a way that, you know, if you're going to include tests and all these extra files, if everybody did that in a consistent way, then people who didn't want those files could more easily remove them. Like we could write a tool that says, okay, walk all the node modules recursively and delete everything called test.
Absolutely. And this is something we've been asking NPM for many years through many different iterations of the team, the CLI team, to effectively define a standard for, like, in the same way as there's the files key, but like you would say this is production files, or you would say this is non-production files, some way to do that. And then you could essentially, NPM would make two tarballs as part of NPM pack and NPM publish. And when you installed, you could choose which ones to install. And that, you know, it would kind of work in the same way. It's more explicit than the Tink approach, but you know, which has ups and downs, you know, pros and cons. But like, I think that would, yeah, go ahead.
Are those existing proposals or?
No, I mean, people have thrown out ideas, but unless NPM is willing to, you know, potentially double the tarball storage size for the entire registry, like they, you know, as well as defining this new standard and then evangelizing its use and so on, like NPM is really the one who would have to do that.
It might make sense
that will be true until
for the package support levels tool that we built. It might make sense for us to try to come up with an implementation and see what kind of adoption we get for the tool that we made, or the recommendation.
So we can do that in terms of imposing a file structure convention, or a documentation convention for the custom file structures. But like, I really think that it's not actually going to help much unless both NPM publish and NPM install for whatever tool is the most popular and whatever registry is the most popular, which at the moment continues to be regular NPM. And unless those things are fully participating in that convention. So if we want to design something and then pitch it to NPM, that'd be great. But also due to personnel issues, that this may not be the best time to ask them to do extra work.
Right, but I think the first step is to define what we'd like, basically have what it would be documented. And then we could play with like tools that delete stuff.
Right.
Other than
But
that,
I mean, also, given that NPM has kind of gone in the direction of Tink, unless that radically changes due to personnel shifts, I don't expect that they will want to go down the more explicit road anymore.
I guess how long is that going to be? How long before Tink is out?
I had all of the personnel drama not happened this year with that company, I would say the goal would have probably been sometime this year, but I have no information as to how that may have changed. And I don't want to suggest that I'm optimistic for it to happen quickly.
Right. So that's why I wonder if it's still worth us collaborating to put together, how big would the spec be that says this is what it should look like?
Yeah. I mean, we can do that. I think the challenge is that there's so many disparate conventions in the ecosystem that even documenting that is a massive amount of work. And it has to be documented in order to come up with either deciding on the common ways to do it, or coming up with a configurable way to represent all of those patterns. We have to know what they are in order to design a schema that can handle them. So we can do it. It's just, let's make sure we are aware that it's probably going to be a very large amount of work.
Yeah, I guess as opposed to just putting something on paper and trying to get people to comment on it and say, hey, wait a sec, that doesn't work.
Yeah, and that might be a really viable low effort way to start some momentum on it. But
right.
Yeah, I think we should try to be really clear in such communication that we have no idea if this is a viable path. We know there's many other approaches people take, and in either way, we'll still want to document I want to ignore as few things as possible, and I want to ignore as many things as possible, and we'll still want to document those paths based on what people already do.
Yeah, no, I think I definitely like your suggestion of 2-3 paths that say, if you want to push everything, here's the best way. If you want to push the least, here's the best way. Right. And just as part of that, to explore some of these ideas.
Right, and we'll probably eventually want to have things like, does your package have a build process? If not, here is the general way, some guidelines to follow. If so, here's some modified guidelines to follow. More of a flowchart wizard approach as opposed to this is the one true way approach. Even though everyone will have their own idea of which of those paths are the one true way.
Right.
We can still do a good job of even with a group of us or a group of people with strong opinions, we can still do a good job of minimizing the damage by creating a few well-paved roads.
Yeah, there's 2 true ways. That's much better than 10,000, right? And
I pretty much for any end.
Yeah, and a lot of people probably don't care. So if they, some people care strongly. Other people are going to be well, okay, if you tell me this is a good way, I'll just do it because.
That's why linting style guides are nice, because there's a few different popular ones, and most people pick one because they don't care enough, and that's better than not having those guides out there at all.
So I think the bigger topic is that this may worthwhile to separate this out as a different topic, because the original motivation for this issue is simpler than what we're discussing. Original motivation, we would like to make it known that, hey, when you publish a package, these are the tools or ways you can specify in your package such that you should publish your package without some of these extraneous files, and the document kind of basically pretty much lay that out. And on the topic of should we publish all these source extra docs and tests, I think for me personally, when I am looking at a package and when I need to investigate something, or when I need to verify this package, I would like to have both. I would like to be able to have a single source where I go and I get the entire package with everything, the original extra document, test, and everything. But on the other hand, when I'm running my app in the production, I would like to have the minimum required code only. So, to Jordan's point, I would really like to be able to easily get to everything when I need them, but I also would like to be able to run everything with the minimum required files. And with Tink and everything that's under discussion, to proposal to NPM to be able to publish like multiple tables, and these things, both Ting and those proposals, I think they're fairly far out. So maybe we should just separate this out as a different topic on like how should we approach publishing these useful but not necessary files in production.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think it's going to be tricky to word it such that it doesn't upset folks on either end of the spectrum. Because any like talking about files versus npm ignore, like I think we can certainly have that discussion distinct from the more philosophical discussion of how much stuff do you publish. But the downsides and upsides of files versus npm ignore vary based on which camp you're in. So
yeah,
it's tricky to separate, I think.
Yeah, and I try to make that as neutral as possible when I kind of list as a kind of enumerate those two methods in the doc. It's like absolutely no, basically factually saying like if you go with files, these are the things you should watch out for. If you go with npm ignore, these are things you should be aware of.
Yeah, I opened up an issue. It's called, or the title is, just to help me to clarify, maybe to make sure I got it right, but RFC, proposal for configurable way to npm install only the desired files from npm modules.
Yeah, that sounds like the prerequisite of that is being able to publish your package in multiple tasks.
It's both. The author needs to be able to indicate which files are required for production and which files are not. And then once that exists, npm install should have a way to, install the subset or the full set as the user likes.
Right. Okay.
Right. I like, it's almost like and I somehow managed to lose this, but like we might want to, would it make sense to start by like documenting the 2-page paths? Which is like, what should you be doing today if you want to publish everything, and what should you be doing today if you want to publish the minimal thing? Because it seems like that would capture the state of the art, and then we could go from there to say, well, like if you're publishing everything, if you use this structure or something, then you can pull down a subset or whatever. And I'm just thinking, what's the top level description of the thing we would then, like, is this the proposal?
I think what you're asking for is something we can do, but I don't think we should get into the structure, because like, then we're going to get into like, should tests be co-located or not, which is a whole different debate. Like, if, how do you define those structures, things like that. I think that we definitely can start by saying, either you are interested in minimizing the size of your published package, or you are interested in maximizing the availability of, your package code and making sure that these commands, whatever, that we can state the two positions and then say, given these two approaches, here's the pros and cons of files versus npm ignore, and here's the one we recommend.
So I'm curious what the difference, we were saying that there's a prerequisite for communicating which files are necessary for production use. Is that not, correct me if I'm wrong, in the package.json, don't we have dev dependencies and, regular dependencies? What would the difference be between that?
So that doesn't tell you anything about the actual first party files in the package. In other words, like, let's say I have 50 first party files. You know that one of them is the main, and maybe one is a bin, and maybe one is a browser, but like, you have no other signals that the other 47 are used or not by production and in production, and you can't you can't reliably statically analyze. You can get a lot of confidence, but you still can't get all the way there, where there's a bunch of files that you might end up that are dynamically required, or that are, I don't know. I
wonder to what extent we could say like we could generate a percentage of confidence and say, I'm not saying that we need to do this, but if you scan the code with whatever tool and you can tell that there aren't any requires, there's not like a dynamic import kind of in the pre-bundled, repo or whatever at that stage when they're deploying, maybe at that stage we could have a tool where we provide it to developers who are creating modules to say, it looks like you're not dynamically importing anything. Is it safe to say, that what's in the files that aren't importing things from dev dependencies are your dist requirements, and everything else can be considered tests?
Right. But then you get into the problem of deep imports. Every file that is reachable is potentially a used part of your public API, even if it's not directly used within your package or referenced in package JSON. So I just think there's no safe option that isn't the author explicitly indicating the status of each file.
Yeah, I was just thinking, how do we begin the conversation from the developer side to say, here's a tool that will help you to understand what we're trying to encourage. If you have the opportunity, please validate that what we're checking for.
I think a tool that offers up suggestions for explicit documentation would be helpful, but we'd first have to decide what that explicit documentation looks like and make sure that once defined, npm install respected it and so on. So I think that
like
the
a prerequisite,
tool is a good
prerequisite.
Yeah, like I think that tool is a great migration tool, like a helper, but like that would come after we had something working to migrate to.
Right. I was thinking, like, if we documented the 2 paths pass, right? And then you could think what tools help you with those.
Right.
So you're thinking like and even saying like a structure wouldn't be workable, but maybe something where you could tag a directory that said these files are.
I mean, you could easily define something in package JSON that's a series of globs or something, and people could use that to, like, in git ignore style, and people could use that to opt in or opt out various paths from being production or from being dev or whatever. We just have to decide what that is, and then like have a tool to validate it, and then like make sure npm install can work with it. But once we had that, then I think it becomes pretty, not easy, but pretty straightforward to do the things that were just being suggested and scan a package and say, these files are definitely for production, and these files are definitely not, but these files are question marks, what are they? And we could help someone build up those arrays. And there's all sorts of tools we could do there. We could build a pre-published script that says, hey, here's a new file. Did you really mean for this to be in production, or did you really mean for this not to be? There's lots of like help we can provide at that point, but we have to have something to help them onto, I think, first.
Yeah, no, I think documenting, so something, if we documented what would go in the package JSON, then you could actually play with tools that would strip all that stuff out. Even if you didn't save the download, Joel was saying before, when he's developing, he'd like everything.
Yeah,
go into production, if you had a tool that you could just say, run this tool, and it strips all the stuff out that you in theory don't need, that wouldn't require npm. And we could build some tools, experiment with that. And then if, that's a good way to show that, hey, wait a sec, this really is useful having in npm itself, right?
Right. So I was thinking that we can start with maybe come up with a way for package to specify these files with globs, and then, it would be nice if npm can allow publishing them as different tasks. But then, even if we don't have that, we can like create a tool that goes through this and just kind of clean up the node modules after the npm install. And even so, for me, even right now, I actually like have a very small, quick hack shell script myself that just kind of go into node modules and just delete all .amd, the dot files, and delete any directory that's named test, and any files that like .spec, .js, or any directory like underscore test underscore for jest. So those are like something I do quickly myself. But with that, without any kind of guarantee validation, I risk having an app that breaks because I accidentally remove some file that is critical.
That sounds good. I just wrote up, if you could see in my share, I think I'm still sharing. Yeah. So document how to specify non-production files in package JSON, then explore tools to remove non-production files, explore tools to help generate or Maintainer, what the heck?
I'll take that one.
Okay, maintainer generate package to sections, and then later talk to npm about supporting this. Okay, so I'll assign that to you, Joel. I will convert it to an issue so I can do that.
I typed up more or less the same stuff as I picked it up into the maintenance meeting notes.
Okay. Sounds good. So should I cut and paste what you have in from the notes there in there too?
That one's pretty high level. The two below might be helpful.
Okay. I will just paste that in as extra stuff in there too, because it's good to have. Where did that go? Okay, there we go.
Alrighty, folks.
Okay.
I have to drop off.
Yeah, so I think we're pretty much, well, we're over time. I would have liked to talk about the next steps in the support levels of package.json, but I think we're basically out of time. Is the other two anything that people think we need to talk about this time? And I guess the next time is 2 weeks. Yes, okay.
Sorry, I would like only to add for the next step on support level. I would like to ask if I can update your first post because some bullet point has been done.
Yep, absolutely.
So I would like only to proceed with other to-do list.
Yeah, no, certainly check off whatever you think is already. Can you check it off?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, go ahead, check off whatever you think is already completed, and I know that we've got approval to move the tool over. I just haven't had a chance to do that, so we'll try and get that done in the next couple weeks.
And I'll merge in the documentation for tool adding based on that process we followed this time right now. Cool. And I will catch you guys next time.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Good.
Great. Okay. And yeah, so we have very good conversation, very good discussion, and we'll get back to those other issues next time. Okay. Perfect. Thanks. Talk to everybody later.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.